Hi guys, we're going to be focusing this week still on paper two, but look, we've got a change in direction, a change in focus from social diversity to gender. Okay, so although we're on remote learning lesson 12, we're going to start to create a bridge between what we've done with social diversity across to gender. Now, what I would encourage is us to realize that obviously we're going to have to do new content using the remote learning method because we're only going to be meeting in college, I think, for about 3 hours. And my intention is to just give you some materials to obviously direct you and help you understand what's working best with remote learning so that you can cope with and assimilate new information. Okay, my darlings, so we're going to be building from social diversity, a bridge to gender today. Now, the way we're going to do that is we are going to use the same question stem and the same question format as we've just done. So we're going to get thinking about gender, but within the framework of a question three, for section B, question three. All right, so we're going to use what we already know from last week to create a bridge to something new across to gender. So if you look, this is a very similar question that we use to introduce the social diversity essay. According to the articles, how does gender determine a person's use of language? So we're going to start building and reinforcing key skills, but with a new topic focus, and we'll use that to then leap into theories linked to gender. So, okay, we'll never know the answer till we unpack the article, but it's still building on those skills of application of knowledge and skills. Okay, we're going to be using these articles, though, to introduce knowledge of theories and concepts, but we're also going to be looking at what the writers are doing and how. Okay, so what we're going to do, though, is, because we've done this once before, we're going to speed up some of these skills, hopefully. So then rather than spending a whole week on one article, a whole week on another, and bring them together, we're going to probably spend like an hour and a half on one article, an hour on the other, and build up that way. So we are going to read and analyze two new articles, but with the focus on gender. So what are these articles telling us about how gender determines a person's use of language and the linked attitudes and issues that that creates? So we are reinforcing and securing the skills as section B, question three. Okay, while shifting our focus to the new topic of gender. So it is very similar initially in the look and the layout. So on each slide, there's going to be a section of an article and a series of tasks to complete. At the end of a series of lessons, there'll be a small quiz to check your understanding and learning. There is a PDF Word version of the articles available. And again, that disclaimer that in the exam, these are skills that you would only really spend about 7 to 10 minutes doing. So we're going to go quicker than we did before, but not as fast as we would for the real exam. Okay, so we will practice that later, but not this at this stage. Okay, my lovely. So this is how a question would look. So there it is, section B, language discourses. It says answer both question three and question four in this section. Now we're all about question three. We're not worrying about question four or question one yet. Okay. Now the rationale, you'll remember 40 marks is the highest value of all three tasks that you'll do in the exam. It's also got the most transferable skills. So what we're doing here will also reinforce your learning with Miss Lockett at the level of language labeling, and also coming in and dealing with text you've never seen before. Similarly, you are thinking about coursework questions. And really, this is a question. How does gender determine a person's use of language? That might be the kind of question you might ask based on your coursework. Okay, how does X determine Y? So again, these are skills that do transfer across to the analysis of the materials and data you're going to gather for your homework, for your coursework. So there's lots of transferable skills. Okay, my darlings. So text A is printed on page 3. It's a feature article about women's language from Mail Online. Text B, printed on the insert, is the start of a feature article about women's language from the Guardian website. You have to analyse how language is used in text A and B to present views about women's language. In your answer, you should examine any similarities and differences you find between the two texts and explore how effectively the text presents their views. So guys, if you remember, I said that this question, there are the fundamental core elements that always stay the same. There's things that always stay the same, two texts, text A and a text B. The analyze how language is used in text A and B to present will always stay the same. Now, for us, our focus is on views about women's language. That's how we're going to bridge to gender. But these 2 bullet points here are exactly the same every exam season. Okay, so there's lots of value in practicing this type of question. Okay, my darlings, and just to remind you that sometimes paraphrasing a task, putting it into our own words, just checks we understand it. So here's my paraphrase of what we're actually being asked to do. We're being asked to look at how language is being used to present different points of view, different opinions, different perspectives about women's use of language. And that could be positive, negative, or ambivalent. Okay, and that's what we're going to practice. Now, we are going to remind ourselves of this acronym, the ideal paragraph outline, that these are the core set of skills that we want to integrate into our annotation, into our writing. We want to be able to identify and interpret a perspective, a viewpoint, a thought, a feeling about women and their use of language. We want to, once we've pinpointed that moment, zoom in and describe how the language is working to present that idea using our language labels. We want to be able to explain and or evaluate the effects and representation created and the meaning of that. We want to be able to appreciate in context to recognize that the context will impact on meaning, and we want to be able to link and compare the 2 texts at a given point. Okay, so I love that acronym. We're going to be using that whenever we're thinking about an analytical paragraph. Okay, so straight into it. So in a minute, you're going to pause and just work through these activities. Okay, so text A, male online, female, home news, US sport, TV showbiz, Australia, and then in pink, female. Okay, and you can see that the female tab, okay, these are tabs across the top, these are hyperlinks, is in a particular color. And then under that female, we've got latest headlines, female, fashion finder, food, female boards, beauty, gardening, deals, blogs, baby blog, login. Okay, and then we then get to our headline. Do women really talk like 12-year-old girls? Actress Lake Bell insists there is a vocal pandemic of adults talking in baby voices. By Daily Mail reporter, published 2139 on the 31st of July 2013, updated on the at 2309 31st of July 2013. And then underneath that, you can clearly see we've got a Facebook icon, a share, a Twitter, a Pinterest, Google Plus, email, and then over here we've got 203 views and comments. Now, all of that information enables us to establish context. Okay, and the context of the opinion that we're going to be looking at is an online article for what publication? The Mail Online. And a very clever pun, we're in the female section. So can you see we've got the word female, but it's been spelt to create a combination of female and male online. Okay, so quite clever. And pink color palette. Okay, so as you look around, there's just some notes that I want you to make. Now you can do this in your book. You can do this on screen if you've got that kind of capability. You can print off the article if you can access a printer, and you can just be making notes. Or as I said, you can just be making notes into your book. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to pause and answer these questions. Or sorry, come up with these notes. It's just about note taking, okay? Annotation. So what can you notice about graphological features? What are the color choices? What can you notice about the style and design of the page? What can you tell me, or who can you tell me does the byline credit? Okay, now if we're looking down and focusing on the headline, this yellow section, can you tell me the 2 sentence functions? Because there are 2 sentences here. What are the sentence functions? What are the 2 sentence types? And which word introduces a metaphor linked to illness? Okay, so that's you guys zooming in on the headline in a minute. Then over there, over here in the grey, whose opinion is introduced in this headline? And can you complete the pairs? Women plus. So there's another word in that headline that would form a pair with the idea of woman. And then baby voices. What word would that be linked to? Okay, so just press pause, do your activities, and when you check in, we'll go through the answers together. Okay, lovely people, colour choices. Okay, so we've got mainly black, a little bit of blue, but what's that predominant standout colour? their choice of pink. Now, this is important because in terms of representation, how are we immediately presenting women? How are we immediately presenting gender? What do we think when we think of women in pink? Okay, guys, absolutely. They're reinforcing a gender stereotype, a stereotypical representation of women through pink. If we wanted to be really kind of like then zoom in on some of those pink things, beauty, baby, fashion. So we have got the context of an online article very much located and anchored into the seemingly stereotypical appeal and representation to women. Okay, so it's definitely stereotypical, and that starts the idea we're directed there simply through that color choice. Now, in terms of the style and the design of this page, what could you draw attention to? Okay, so we've got very clear indicators and signifiers that this is an online article. We've got our cross-platform links to Facebook and to Twitter. We've got a seemingly traditional headline, but it is then formatted within an online kind of set of expectations. So we've got our tabs across the top. We've got the use in the top left-hand corner of often what we call the page name and the logo, something that clearly identifies that this is from the Mail. Okay, so lots of the stylistic, the design features are combining our expectations of an online site with an online article, but very much again reinforcing a kind of female representation of a typical female reader. Okay, so it's making certain assumptions about women and their needs and what they're interested in. Now, a little small thing about the byline. So can you remember what we actually mean by byline? Okay, it's finding out who is the writer of this article. Now, this is quite interesting. This is very much when we talk about appreciating things in context, okay? Our byline is a Daily Mail reporter. No name, no individuality. They are defined by their job, being a Daily Mail reporter. Now, this is quite interesting because when we get into the article and analyse it, this is very typical of online journalism today. Okay, with the development of online journalism and often the need to put out a large amount of content because online platforms, okay, they have to carry a lot more content than a traditional printed newspaper would. So how do they fill so much space? How do they generate so much content? They have lots of nameless reporters or journalists putting together lots of different articles by creating composites, by looking at other articles from other websites, following a trend, following something that's particularly pertinent, but they quite often then work within permissions to just take large chunks of other articles and create what we call a composite article. Now, what this does then, that this means that the opinion within this article is never really led by a strong opinion, an opinionated voice or somebody with a strong opinion. Okay, it's much more kind of the ethos, the ideology of the whole publication. So this one Daily Mail reporter is going to be representative of the whole Mail online ethos and ideology and belief system. Okay, but we'll come back to that later. Okay, so what about our headline and our sentence functions? Do women really talk like 12-year-old girls? Brilliant. We've got our interrogative. It ends in the question mark. Now, the next bit, actress Lake Bell insists. So it's beginning with a subject. So there's no verb at the beginning of the sentence, so it cannot be imperative. Okay, it's not exclamatory, it's our declarative. So we've got an interrogative and a declarative. Okay, so then in terms of looking at sentence types, so we can do this by looking at our verbs. So actress Lake Bell insists, there's our first one, insists, there is vocal pandemic of adults talking in baby voices. And talking also. So we're immediately thinking, is this going to be compound or complex? Because we have more than one verb. So it cannot be minor and it cannot be simple. Okay. Now, actress Lake Bell insists is a subordinate clause. There is vocal pandemic of adults talking in baby voices. So these are a combination of subordinate clauses. So we're looking at a complex sentence. Now, in the first one, do women really talk like 12-year-old girls? Okay, so women really talk. So we've got the talk and the do. Okay, yep. So we're looking at that complex interrogative structure. Okay, so we've got two complex sentences. We've got an interrogative and a declarative. And which word introduces a metaphor linked to illness? Brilliant. Pandemic. That's the one. Okay, who's